On February 7th, 2023, Ridgefield's Planning and Zoning Commission opened its third public hearing on inclusionary zoning, which its chairman, Rob Hendricks, summarized this way.
So this is an inclusionary zoning regulation amendment. So what this regulation does is it actually says is that when this commission does see a application for 4 or more dwelling units in this community, that application must include a minimum number of affordable units within the project, which must comply entirely with our regulations. And that project must otherwise comply with all our regulations. There's no skirting of the regulations, there's no change to the regulations.
But Commissioner Katz describes it differently.
8-30G can be made to work for the developer. And I think that's what we need to have as our goal. Not that it should be 8-30G being okay for the developer, but it should be Ridgefield's plan is a good plan for somebody who wants to come in and build half a dozen houses. We could do in regulation what 8-30G does in broad stroke, obliterate zoning regulation.
They can't both be right. A link to the current proposed regulation is in the video description below. Read it and decide for yourself. This is inexplicably the first of 18 approaches the Planning and Zoning Commission is taking, having never established any priorities or a logical sequence, as Commissioner Mariah O'Kronkley laments.
I would love to see a prioritization of those 18 things in the affordable housing plan. What actually are we doing and who's owning those things, which I've brought that up in multiple meetings and have not heard anything about how that's being handled, which I think is very important just for the town as a whole, because I think affordable housing is important, and I'm not as concerned about a moratorium or 10%, but just having different housing options for different people of different income levels in town.
Though 830G and a moratorium are not priorities for Ms. O'Kronkley, Commissioner Susan Constantino acknowledges that inclusionary zoning is not a panacea and may not be the best place to start this effort.
I was just going to say, just from things I'm listening to everybody talking, I just wanted to kind of reiterate, this is how I see it, that we don't think we're going to get to the moratorium with just this. This is just a tool. This is just one way. That we are not under the impression, or I'm not under the impression, that this is going to solve the whole problem. This is just a little piece of it, and there are other things that we can do that we haven't even started to talk about. We can't get to them until we finish this up.
Is this the best place for the Planning and Zoning Commission to start to execute the unprioritized and unsequenced affordable housing plan approved by the Board of Selectmen? It is a plan barely approved by a 3-2 vote of the Board of Selectmen, and now their silence on inclusionary zoning is deafening.
We have a referral into the Board of Selectmen on this topic that goes back to November 29th. We haven't heard anything formally. I don't know if you want to say.
It hasn't been brought up at the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
I just want to comment, I think that's a little concerning that the affordable housing plan, which is where we took this concept from, that was approved by the Board of Selectmen and created by the Affordable Housing Commission, that they haven't provided in over 2 months any feedback to us. I do think that is important feedback because they are the body that ultimately confirmed the plan, submitted it to the state. So just wanted that on record, that I do feel that the Board of Selectmen, in authorizing that plan, should at least comment that they are for or against the work that we're doing.
With the exception of Bob Hebert, the Board of Selectmen have made no appearance, much less officially responded to the Commission's referral. But the public is less than enthusiastic about the Commission's approach to so-called inclusionary zoning. This video is 90 minutes of public comment and closing the public hearing, followed by 2 minutes of deliberation. Inexplicably, Chris Molyneux moves to approve the draft proposal as submitted. Fortunately, there is no second, and the Commission votes to table deliberation. opening the door for major adjustments at the Commission's next meeting on February 21. While public participation has ended, the public's attendance in force will not go unnoticed. This is Kurt Carr, on the record.
We've heard from the public now several times, many hours. We're interested in having some additional public comment.
I have a question.
If you don't mind, just say your name and
Yeah.
where you.
My name's Whit Campbell. I happen to be on the Affordable Housing Committee. I missed the last meeting, so I was sorry about that, but I will listen to it. My first question was, how'd you come up with 15%? What was the rationale there?
Good question. We've discussed a couple times in the earlier meetings, but I don't mind recapping. I think, first of all, we looked at 7 nearby neighboring towns, Fairfield County. It might have been 6, but I think it was 7. And so we did a little bit of comparative analysis, and that's a number that's used in a couple of towns as a minimum or even incentive level minimum. I think the idea is there. Obviously, 30% is the level at which a project qualifies for 8-30G.
Right.
So something near 30% doesn't make sense because the developer will just automatically go to 830G.
Right.
And then they can just ignore all your regulations.
Okay.
So you want to set a minimum that's a meaningful minimum, that's going to get some units in a project, but isn't so close that the developer's tempted to
Right, so
just
10%, for instance, is not achieving what you want to achieve.
Yeah, and actually the really tricky thing, and we were hoping for some good public comment on this, is if you, and this is on our website, by the way, there's a document like this. If you look at, like, the rounding is funny because, of course, if you have 4 units, which is our, we're saying 4 projects of 4 units or more have to include affordable. Well, if you round,
Right.
1 of 4 is 25% already. Right?
Right.
So actually the percentage is not quite, the percentage is only interesting at the bigger numbers. At the smaller numbers, what you really have to do is look at the actual number rather than the percentage. Below 10 units, it really matters what is the number,
Okay.
not the percentage.
Okay, thanks for updating. We're sorry to make you repeat what
No,
you
it's
already
okay.
done, but, and then I did about a week ago, I read through the regulations, the proposed regulations, and I just wanted to say that I like the fact that you're, like if somebody's building something that has multiple units, you're requiring all the units to be not the same, but equal.
Yeah.
I think that's a great move.
Yeah, that's kind of traditional now at this point in most of these types of regulations and projects. Any other public comment? Deb. Deb, if you don't mind, just stand up a little bit closer because there's a microphone here for the Zoom people.
Okay, my name is Deborah Franciscini, Okay, my name is Deborah Franciscini. I live on 72 Byron Road, and I'm here to talk about the coastal resorts. I just want to make it clear because the way I see this is it's basically A3G without, it's sort of like A3G, except they have to follow regulations. Is that correct? So unlike A3G, where they can come in and just plow through Richfield and just bypass most of our zoning laws, this allows us to control the building because they have to still follow regulations, zoning regulations. Is that right?
That's a good summary of
Okay.
part of it, yeah.
Right, so that-
We're saying that affordable housing must be built
Right.
and must follow our regulations.
Right, so if somebody builds something, they should build a building 15%. So use an example of like Bailey Avenue, for example. That would be a situation where we would have to beg for affordable housing. It'd have to be done naturally, unless you wanted to pay a fee. But it wouldn't apply to apartments. The fee in lieu would just apply to homes, correct?
Yes, the fee in lieu, the way it's drafted in the document is that if a project is a exclusively single-family home project,
Right.
then the developer has the option of doing a payment in lieu of. And that was really, again, because we recognize that if somebody's developing big homes
Right.
on a big lot,
Mm.
well, they might economically, we heard it in our last meeting, economically, it might not make sense to make one of those affordable.
Right.
And you want to say to that person, okay, we recognize that
Right.
reality, but you don't get a free pass.
Right.
You have to help in some way.
Right. So I guess the other question I had, or just clarification, was that if somebody builds for more units, they automatically have to pay. They automatically have to make 15% of those units affordable, correct?
Yes.
I'm taking non-home, single-family homes out. So I'm not sure why that would be a bad thing, because if people are going to build no matter what, and if they build, they should be able to give back to the community in some way to help heal, like solve the problem. Because as you said, A3G doesn't help us get anywhere, because it has a certain minimum, and every time they build those units, we just get back behind the eight ball. So I'm trying to understand this the way it's explained. I just want to make sure that I have it right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to point out, I don't believe we've decided that this is going to be a town-wide zoning regulation. From my point of view, it's not going to be.
I agree.
So I just wanted to make clear that even the skeleton that we have in front of us, from my point of view, is wanting in a great number of areas, most particularly that this is inclusive of all zones in the town of Ridgefield, and I don't think it should be. I think we should be smart enough to delineate a region that we, the commission, believes is suitable for expanded areas of housing, both expanded in terms of the nature of the housing and the number of units the housing would include. And I will not vote for anything that has a town-wide zone.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Macklin Reed. I live on Great Hill Road. I came because I watched the last hearing on Zoom, and I felt like somebody had to speak up for what I feel is a long-standing consensus among town officials and people that care about the town, regular townspeople that have lived here a long time, that affordable housing is a good thing, and we do need more of it. We need some of it. It's not healthy to have a town where only people that make $800,000 a year can live there. There's a lot of people like me that live here because we've lived here, for 40 years and haven't been pushed out yet. But I would encourage the commission to pursue this goal. I don't have a lot to say about the details of the regulation, but I think affordable housing is a goal that should be pursued, and it's not bad. People are always afraid of change. We moved here in 1955, and I can remember my mother freaking out because Leo Carroll was going to pave Cooper Hill Road. And we survived that. People are going to build anyway. There's going to be construction. We don't need only McMansions. I very much support the commission's mandatory aspect in this. Like, there was a lot of sentiment against that at the last hearing. I think that's great, because for decades, as someone that's, watched what's going on in town, I've seen there's been that, like, you get an extra 8 units as opposed to 6 units an acre if you make some of them affordable, and very little has been done with that. I think saying if you're going to build, you have to include some affordable is the way to go. And I applaud the commission for attempting it, and don't be scared off. You're always going to have some people that are, freaked out and opposed to it, but it's a worthy goal, and one that, as I said, there's been a long consensus in favor of that as something that must be done, and it's also required by the state now, And it's not just something that people are doing because they're crazy. It's like it's needed. So that's fine. Good.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Mazzola? Oh, sorry. Somebody else?
So I was on the Zoom call last week, and
If you don't mind, just your name and your address.
Linda Lavelle,
Yep.
Aspen Mill Road in Ridgefield. I've been here 51 years and raised my 3 children here. Part of that time as a single parent. So I've seen the high income and the low income of Ridgefield over many years. Anyway, I don't want to repeat what was said last week. You all have the records of it. What I wanted to do tonight was give some background as to where this affordable or inclusive or low-cost housing originated and comes from, because you're part of a much larger picture. It's not just about Ridgefield. And then, and who's behind the housing bills that are being pushed in Hartford. And finally, I had a couple of suggestions about how we can address your amendments and have low cost or affordable housing when we need it. So if you'll bear with me, I'd like to just read what I've written. It will take 7 or 8 minutes, if that's okay. The background. The 1968 Fair Housing Act made it illegal to refuse to sell or rent housing based on race, color, religion, sex, etc. In 2015, President Obama added a rule to mandate fair housing in every suburban community, and he instructed HUD to do an assessment of every community in the United States to determine disparity in housing. The 2020 Democrat platform pledged to vigorously enforce the Obama rule, but now the goal was to eliminate exclusionary zoning. No community block grants, including transportation grants, would be given to states that don't comply. So the assumption is now that the purpose of zoning is to exclude people, when the truth is, well, that's better, that anyone who can afford to buy or rent property can do so, whether it's a small 2-bedroom bare bones house or a multi-million-dollar estate. And the purpose of zoning is to protect private property by disallowing commercial buildings or high-rises in areas designated for single-family homes. In Governor Lamont's first speech as governor, I heard him say he'd like to see an end to single-family zoning. In Ridgefield, 82% of homes are single-family homes. So who's behind Connecticut's housing bills? Desegregate Connecticut was the most vocal, and as I remember, of the lobbyists demanding state control of municipal housing and development. Desegregate Connecticut is a project of a nonprofit organization in New York called RPA, which is funded by a list of large corporations such as Durst Organization, large developers, RXR, a multi-billion-dollar private real estate company, SL Green, New York City's largest commercial landlord, Suffolk Construction, nationwide high-rise builders, and several others like these. It also got a chunk of Connecticut taxpayer funds from the state to lobby the state. We won't talk about corruption. None of these people care about you, or me, or Ridgefield. One can assume they are interested in building large-scale edifices for profit, which is admirable. I'm a capitalist. But not when it is forced by government on residents who don't want or need them. And so HB 6107 was passed by our Hartford-run legislature to supplant earlier housing bills. It did not, by the way, supplant 830G, as you know. So what does 6107 say? It affirmatively furthers fair housing based on state arithmetic, ignoring what people have always done to achieve affordability, like taking on roommates, working 2 jobs like my dad, learning additional job skills like I had to do with 3 kids to support. It is to provide multifamily housing opportunities for all residents of the town and planning region. So that tells you what they have coming for us in the future, is regional planning. It is to promote economic diversity, which we already have, not everybody in Ridgefield, lives in multi-million dollar houses. Many of us, I mean, Bob and I, our only income is Social Security, and we're here. And must meet the state's plan of housing needs. Notice that's not Ridgefield's needs, it's the state's idea of what our housing needs are. It set up a commission on Connecticut's development and future with several divisions. The Affordable Housing Working Group put out a draft report with the final report due in April. Here are some things they've determined which affect us. They've said, number one size fits all housing mandates does not work, so good for them. 2, each town should prepare an assessment including affordable units that are not deed restricted, existing accessory dwelling units, government subsidized units, income and employment types, housing authority wait list, and available transportation. I would add sewer capacity to that. And last week, one of the homeowners asked you if you had done an assessment, and really nothing has been done. We need to know what Ridgefield's needs are, not what the state determines. We're a very special town. They also offer that affordable housing can be repair of existing residential units. It also says that historic districts or buildings must be respected, unlike 830G, which is the character of a town is not to be considered. So here's my take on what P&Z should do. We have heard from local builders that increasing the minimum affordable units to 15% is unprofitable unless it is a high-rise building with many units at market rate to offset the cost, and that's because land is so expensive. The only way they could do that is tearing down existing housing to put up a high-rise. Would you like your neighbor's house to be torn down and a high-rise 10 or 12-story apartment building next to you? And I know you said that you think that by having 15%, they'll be happy to work with you. I wouldn't bet money on that. Please strike that amendment from consideration. You are only making those New York developers dance for joy. Also, please strike the amendment allowing multifamily building in all residential zones. People work hard and save for years to buy homes in Ridgefield, and we depend on government to protect private property, a foundational tenet of our economic system. This amendment destroys that principle. Ridgefield is a small, semi-rural town with no sidewalks or streetlights anywhere but downtown. The complaint I so often hear is that we are already overbuilt with multifamily units. Do we need more? We have a 2% poverty rate and an affordable housing wait list of only 81 people, only 16 of whom are from Ridgefield. Our town population is expected to decrease over the next 17 years, and we have the second lowest housing cost burden of any of our surrounding towns. Why not add an amendment stating that P&Z will do a biennial housing assessment going forward? When there is evidence of need, we will encourage state subsidization of repairs to older single-family homes in need of repair. We will also consider market prices that may fall as our population decreases and Casagno apartments and other multifamily units become vacant. We live in a town that has homes and other buildings that are as much as 300 years old. It makes no sense to dismiss buildings built in the 1970s. As inflation continues, ADUs may be a way for homeowners to earn extra income to pay for their mortgages. A win-win situation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Any questions?
Online.
Any questions from the commission? Okay.
I have 2 online.
We have two folks raising their hand online. Let's see if there's anybody else in the room.
That's fine.
You want to go to
Okay,
that
go to
first? Okay. You want to go to Christopher, I missed the last name, sorry, Artie. Bat? Yeah. Mr. Volsing, sorry if I mispronounced that.
You actually said it perfectly. Yes, Chris Volsing, resident of North Street. I was reviewing the regulations, and even though you closed the public hearing on the other one, there is some language in this particular draft about reduction of parking, and wondered if the language in here was in conflict with the language that was being proposed in, what was it, A25 or 22, the first one that you went over tonight.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So in D, sorry, let me give you the section, 8.8 D for the incentives.
Right.
DC, parking. The commission may reduce the parking requirements by up to 25%.
Right. That has nothing to do with the earlier, the earlier discussion we were having was about parking in the CBD, which is the central business district. So in the central, in the village, basically the town center of Ridgefield, new projects or new applicants are eligible for a reduction in the ordinary number of parking requirements, just by virtue of the fact that they're in the CBD where there's presumably shared parking. And so that's a different amendment. It has nothing to do with this one. Now,
Yeah,
this
so
one,
so the thing is, in that amendment, the language that you're proposing is to exclude the residential component, but then this amendment permits it with the residential component as long as you have the 15%.
right, and the reason for this particular clause, and again, as a couple of commissioners have said, we certainly still have room to to strike out sections or edit things. That's why we're having this public hearing, so that we get input. But the initial drafting logic here is that in certain projects, particularly senior housing is a good example, where you could have senior affordable housing, and or other types of affordable housing. It doesn't necessarily have to be seniors. It could also be people with disabilities, for example. Sometimes you have those types of projects where those people, in general, as a group, don't drive as much, and so what this section of this regulation gives the commission, in its discretion, by the way, it's not an automatic give to the applicant, but it gives the commission the ability to reduce the ordinary parking requirements, because the commission could see in the process of a hearing, they could see, oh, this project in this location, given these potential residents, doesn't need necessarily the same quite so high level of parking that we ordinarily require.
Okay, I understand that. I've designed
That's the logic of that section.
Okay. All right, excellent. Yeah, that was my only question of the evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Was there one other one?
Betty Clark was the other one. She has.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
At our last meeting, her name was stuck up for a while last week.
The second one. I'm gonna lower your hand, and I'm gonna allow him to talk. Mr. Lipton?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Dr. Lipton, go ahead.
Well, thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. I think I'm well known to the commission, and I just want to make a couple of different points. First of all, it's Richard Lipton, and I live at 135 Nursery Road. I've been a resident here for 27 years, and my children have all graduated from Ridgefield High School, but I'm also a developer who is brought to this commission consideration of a development on property that we have in town, as well as, I believe, though others may not believe, as an advocate of affordable housing. So I'm in a unique position to be able to judge circumstances at large. And I'd like to make just a couple of what I believe are, I take as factual representations to this discussion that I hope the commissioners will consider. One is that I think that in a general sense, avoiding the 830G issue has been detailed at great length. And the fact is that our ability as a community to avoid the imposition of 830G is simply impractical and should not be a factor in the decisions that you take. I trust that you will consider that. I also think that having listened through the discussions that ensued in the last meeting as well as ours, is that we need to be mindful of the economic conditions. The notion that we're just simply assessing what comes our way. As a developer, what comes your way is what we think is economically feasible. If we don't think it's economically feasible, it's not going to come your way. So when you impose restrictions and apply these broadly as stated, those will impact the way people decide as a developer what needs to be in town. And I'm in a unique position as both a resident as well as a developer who is dedicated to this town to try to come up with a formula that is both economically feasible as well as meet the needs of affordability. And the last piece that I'd add is that the definition of affordability, I'd hope would be, the consideration would be for it to be more of a local standard than a statewide standard, because reasonably, Connecticut is not just one marketplace, it is a broader marketplace, and we are, as developers, subject to the realities of both financial support as well as local costs to be able to bring housing to the community. And I think that a local standard should apply as a local, regional, or area, whatever it is that you want to define it. But I'm prepared in our presentation to bring affordable housing. And frankly, I'm not even threatened by the standards that you are proposing, but I'm speaking as a Ridgefielder and someone who's sitting in that seat and trying to make those judgments on behalf of this community. And I hope these comments are helpful.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Lipton?
Well, I would just note that the project you're working on, Dr. Lipton, is there's significant quantity of, I think, housing. There are large number of units, whereas a smaller number of unit, it might not work out so well financially. Would you agree?
I would agree entirely. I'm not, as I said, I don't feel necessarily encumbered by this regulation for the type of entities that we're trying to create. But the broad placement of this as currently proposed, I think is injurious to the community. I've been very hesitant to even speak on this matter because the truth is I am a proponent of this in the scope of work that we're trying to do. And I hope to be with you not too long in the future with a proposal. So I'm not bothered by much of what you are proposing, except for the local versus state standard. I'd say that's about the only thing, but the percentages and so forth for a larger scale within geographies that are warranted for this type of use, as mine is, I think that's an obligation that should exist. And I'm going to live by that obligation. But some of what's been proposed is a little bit to the side.
Thank you. Dr. Lipton? Okay. Any other public comment? Ms. Pizzola?
Kind of wearing two hats. Lori Mazzola.
If you don't mind popping up just because
Sure.
our mic for the Zoom people is way up here.
So I have a question. When you were discussing the 12 acres in single-family areas, so 12 acres, if it's not feasible for a builder, and he comes in and he wants to build 4 homes, doesn't want to make one of them affordable, and he has to pay a fee in lieu of. Could he technically say, that doesn't work for me, I'd rather build 25 units?
In the
And
current,
make the call?
in the current drafting of the regulation, I guess a number of people said
That's,
we
I
probably,
think, the
we might make
concern.
some edits, but in the current drafting of the regulation, no, any applicant has to provide the mandatory minimum number of affordable units while still complying with all regulations.
Okay.
So if you're developing in R AAA, which is the example that I gave, then you need 3 acres per home, 3 acres per dwelling unit.
Okay,
So you don't arbitrarily make a different decision to, to do
if
an
it's
apartment
not
building.
worth it for him
Right.
or her. Okay, I
I mean,
understand.
They,
So-
they could, by the way, under 830G, they could build
that.
an apartment building in that unit because they, at that point, they don't need to comply entirely with our regulations.
Okay,
But in this regulation that we've drafted,
that would
there's no ability, there's nothing that says the developer can make a decision.
Okay,
If they're developing in our AAA, they have to follow our regulations, and our
Okay.
regulations say 3 acres
That
in
makes
in that
sense.
example.
okay. Thank you for the clarification. And then I'm just going to switch hats. I'm Lori Mazzola, Ridgefield Residents for Smart Development, which was formerly RVU, nonpartisan coalition of Ridgefield residents whose emphasis is ensuring smart and thoughtful development. All active political parties are members. Currently, we now have 3 spokespeople, so you won't only hear from me all the time. Democratic and unaffiliated parties are what they are in. We will rotate spokespeople throughout the year. We also believe that there is no need for the creation of an affordable housing trust fund to collect any fees that may result from this amendment. But should any fees be collected, they should be held by planning and zoning in trust and only be allocated for affordable housing with the unanimous consent by the Board of Selectmen. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Mazzol? Thank you, Ms. Mazzol. Anyone else would like to make a public comment or?
That's a question.
Yep.
It's Doug Bridge again from 70 Spire Road. So my question is, so for, with 830G building, the income types are 80% AMI or 60% AMI. Are we saying that that's good? Is that good? Is it the same case for these affordable units that are part of the inclusionary zoning?
So for people on the Zoom that might not have heard, the question was, the first part is, under 830G, normally a developer has, when they do the 30% affordable to qualify for 830G treatment, they have to do a certain percentage at 80% of the AMI or state median income, the lesser of, and then another 15% at 60. And Ms. Franciscini's question is, would our regulation have that same mix or that same blend? And the answer is essentially no. The way our regulation is drafted, as it is now, and again, I'll say again, we might change it, but the one that we're presenting for discussion simply says that the affordable units that would be developed by the person coming in with an application should qualify under the state's definition of affordable housing. That's actually a legal term in the statute, and affordable housing could be either the 80% level or the 60% level. So it could actually be either at the developer's discretion, as long as it qualifies as
Right.
affordable housing.
But it wouldn't be like 20% of the AMI or 40% of the AMI.
Yeah, it just has to qualify.
It isn't the local, it's the state.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, and the reason we did that, we did discuss it again in like August, September. It's okay because we discussed it sometimes in not the big public meetings, but as we were brainstorming as a group, our feeling was that there's obviously an argument, and Dr. Lipton's one of the ones that made it, is that maybe we should think about more the area median income rather than the state, because hey, let's focus on our area. But the thing is, if our regulation allowed something different, then those units that are being built as affordable wouldn't count toward a moratorium.
Right.
Wouldn't count in the state's eyes. and we did decide as a straw man to present to you all, we think it's probably a little bit better to say that those units should count toward the state's definition of affordable. Now, yeah, we realize that different people could have a different view on that, but we thought, let's get credit, basically, for Ridgefield on these units that are affordable, and that's the draft that's been presented.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, the answer is yes, they have to, they be for either 80% or 60% of the AMI.
The answer is no, that they're not required to have a mix.
Okay, so
But yes, they have to qualify.
So assuming that for financial reasons, they be 80% of the AMI.
Yep.
Then.
That's okay.
That's okay, they could do all 80, they don't have to do 60 at all.
Under our draft.
Yeah, under ours.
It's okay.
So I think it's important that people realize the difference, because there's a significant difference in 80% AMI versus 40% AMI versus 20% AMI. Government subsidized housing, like places like Valley Green, Concord Housing, the Meadows, those are all federally funded, state funded units that allow for very low income residents. Levels of 20%, 40% or lower than AMI. So when we say low income, we have to be very careful about how we define low income, because 80% of AMI isn't necessarily low income as 20% of the AMI. They're two very different things. So I urge people to understand those two things, and how, because I see affordable housing as two different items. There's the ADG type of affordable housing, and there's the federal government subsidized housing, which is deeper.
Yep.
So it's important that be clarified for people that may not understand that,
Yep.
and not left it into one bucket.
Our draft is not pushing the most deeply affordable housing.
Right.
Our draft is.
And what's the, I'm assuming that 80% is the highest, that we call, right, correct, there's nothing, daily 80.
That's the way the state defines it. Right? Yes, sir.
My name is Scott DeYoung. I live on Cottatoa Road in Ridgefield. Just point of information, when you finish developing this draft, do the voters get say on it, or is it just the planning and zoning that gets a say?
Good question. The way all zoning regulations work is the zoning regulations. The Planning and Zoning Commission is the legislative body of the town. You do elect us, so you can fire us to the polls, but the Planning and Zoning Commission makes the votes on the zoning regulations. This is not an ordinance. This is not a part of town code, which those items would go to the voters at large. In this case, to answer your question, it's the Planning and Zoning Commission that votes ultimately.
But we have public hearings, of course, in which this kind of input is welcome.
That's the
So if you have
purpose.
something to say, not you particularly, but you in general, you should come to a public hearing and say it.
But it is, we're under the way it works under the statute, et cetera, is we're the legislative. We're a funny group. I try to explain to people all the time. We have a job that's, and sometimes we have our judge hat on, where we listen to applicants, and we have to decide on the merits of a case, just like a judge would, by just looking at the regulations. And then we put a different hat on, and we actually make the regulations. We can adopt and amend the regulations, which of course has to be done in a public forum like we're doing here. But so when we're doing this here, we have our legislative hat on. We have our making the regulation. Yes, sir.
My name is Thomas Pichet. I live at 1 Jefferson Drive, Ridgefield. I want to just make it very clear. I think everybody in town is very much in favor of affordable housing and giving everyone an opportunity to grow. As I said last week when I spoke, when I came here, I had to work 3 jobs. I could not afford a house. I had to make a deal with the builder that built my house, and I finished the house myself, left it unfinished. Nobody helped me. Nobody gave me any plans. Subsequently, I've helped so many people get into affordable housing in this town and also to buy homes. And so have a lot of other people. We don't all make out $800,000. I definitely don't, not even close to it. okay? And it's really a shame that people regard most people who live in Richfield as being so affluently rich, because they're not. There are a lot of them who are, but most of us are not. As the lady said, we're living on Social Security and pensions, okay? But some of the things that also I want to clear in this point is that our homes are our total investments. Our homes are our bank accounts for the majority of people, no matter what their economic level is. And that's why they moved into this town. And some of the things that I heard was that new construction would be given some waivers. Okay, new construction could be tearing down a house on a 1-acre plot and then building another home there. But then the Planning and Zoning Commission would give that developer a waiver and say, okay, on that lot, you know, since you can't make it work, you can build 4 homes on that lot.
That's not the way the regulation's drafted.
That's not the way they sound now, but that's what I heard some members of the Planning and Zoning Commission say, that they wanted to obliterate zoning laws. Okay, and that is a fact. Okay, and those people can own up to that. That's what makes everyone very scared. Okay, so the other part is that this multifamily, yes.
To rephrase it, are you saying that you've heard from?
I've heard that
From
people on the
this
planning,
commission?
yes, it's been around the town, that members of the Planning and Zoning Commission said they wanted to obliterate zoning laws.
I don't believe that for a moment.
Okay, well then, let's put it down that one of the other questions I'm going to ask you afterwards, that's going to be a fact. Those zoning laws will remain in effect, where there's a one-family home is going to stay there.
That's what we
Okay.
just stated on the record. That's
Okay.
why I took the time to rebrief, because I actually know frankly that there's been some misinformation
Yeah,
going around.
there's a lot of it.
Via certain people that are against this for whatever reasons,
Yeah.
and put some misinformation out
Right.
there. And so, yes, we're trying to make sure that it's very clear.
Yeah.
That's why I spent the time.
So I want to put
restate
you
what
on
we are
record
doing.
as saying.
There's nothing in this regulation that, what this regulation does is it requires affordable housing to be
Yeah.
built while complying with our regulations.
Right.
At the mandatory
Right.
level.
But no altering of zoning laws to allow more housing to be built where there was only a one
No, in
home
fact,
and one house
that's why
built.
we're doing this, because 830G does allow that, and we're trying to not let that happen, which is why we created this document.
At the mandatory level, at the mandatory minimum, all projects have to comply with every letter of our regulations.
Mhm.
So you can't build an apartment building where an apartment building can't be built today, under the mandatory element.
Yeah, there.
There's a second level, just to clarify, so that you, because I don't want there to be misunderstanding. There's a second level where if somebody wants to do a little bit more than the mandatory minimum, then the commission has a very modest ability to provide some small waivers, like the parking that we just described with the gentleman earlier.
Mhm.
So, but that's in the commission's sole and absolute discretion to be able to do that, and that's very limited. It's not, we can't make 4 homes where there should only be 1. That would be too extreme of a waiver. And as Mr. Salvo just said, the reason that we've created the incentive kind of middle zone, and we might strike out that whole section, by the way, but the reason we've created that is to give developers and the commission, frankly, a place to have a negotiation so that they don't resort to 8-30G, because at 8-30G, they can do whatever they want. And we have very limited.
But where there's residential zoning, we're not going to change that to be multifamily zoning.
No, that's, if somebody's told you that, that's a lie.
Well, I
That's
just
a
want
lie
to
or a
put the
misunderstanding.
Planning and Zoning Commission on record that where there's
There's
single
nothing-
family, whether it's 3-acre zoning, 2-acre zoning, 1-acre zoning, that there will not be multifamily homes.
There is nothing in this regulation
Oh,
which
multiple
permits
homes.
multifamily where multifamily is not.
Nor will
permitted
this
today.
regulation change.
Well, new 9 people could always change it, as we were just talking, the 9 people write the
Yeah, well,
regulation.
I
But
don't
the
want
draft
these-
of this
yeah.
does not allow multifamily, where
Okay.
multifamily is not allowed today.
Okay.
And I know there's people out there in the community who have said that, who are just trying to basically
Well,
scare
it
people.
sounded that way last week too, that they were going to allow some multifamily.
There's
Okay.
nothing in this regulation that
Okay.
permits multifamily where multifamily is not
Okay.
already allowed.
Okay, I want to clarify, no open space, no land conservancy or other types of land that's been deeded to open space is going to be taken over
There's nothing
for
in this
anything of
regulation.
affordable housing or income housing.
There's
Great.
nothing in this regulation.
Next,
which
I want to
threatens
ask
open
you,
space.
based on what you're saying, okay, is that you are expecting 10% affordable housing in Richfield. Is that the mark that you're looking for?
This commission has gone on the record in previous meetings in saying that we think that 10% is unrealistic. The 10% is set by the state as a place where they think we should.
So you think it could be, and will be satisfied with even a lower percentage rate?
This commission has said that 10% is not realistic in our lifetime, certainly not Mr. Katz's lifetime, not my lifetime either.
Hey, listen, let's not pick on us senior people, you know? We may have a limited time, but we have a good time going for
But what
us.
we can do, sir,
Okay.
is we can make progress toward a moratorium, and we've talked about that a lot. And more importantly than making a progress toward a moratorium is not going backwards. And what this commission sees, every time a project comes, and it's 5 units, or 15, or 120, each one of those projects, if it doesn't have affordable, if it has zero affordable, we go backwards.
Mhm.
We go backwards on the goal, and we're not making progress toward a moratorium. And that's our goal, is to make some progress so that we don't go backwards.
Okay. The other part is that you've stated before that you don't know the number of the percentage of homes that are affordable in town at this point. Okay, so how any voting or anything can be done is beyond me, because I'm a person who deals totally on
That
facts.
percentage is known, and it's been discussed in different meetings.
Okay, what is
I want to say
that?
off the top of my head, I think it's just a little less than 3%.
Okay,
Don't quote me on that, I
okay.
could be wrong, I think it's
Okay,
2.6.
I'm going to challenge that percentage in a moment.
We also
Okay.
challenge that percentage.
Good,
So we're
good.
great.
Okay, so then we're working
Yeah, we
together,
really
which is great.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's how the state counts it.
Okay, I'm not gonna go over the guidelines for affordable homes, but based on last week's commentary, a lot of houses available for low income are available for low income and affordable housing. The Congregate housing is there, the Casagmo is there, the Fox Hill is there, the Prospect Road, Drive and New Street have come into that, okay? So, this will give us something for approximately 300 to 500 units being affordable in town right now, okay?
Excuse me,
I'm sorry.
what is that based on?
That's based on the number of units that exist in Casagmo, Fox Hill, the Congregate housing.
Have you tried to rent one recently or buy one?
Yeah, Casagmo is going for going for about 252 to 300. Fox Hill is
What
going
you're
for
saying
less.
is if you added up all the units in
You
those
add up
projects,
all the
it should be
units,
300.
right.
Okay.
Right, they're all available for anyone with limited income to purchase,
Right.
even though they're not deed restricted.
Right.
Okay, but we said we don't want deed restricted.
Yep.
Okay, so that's good, so we're in compliance with that.
Well, compliance is a funny word.
Well, no,
We're in agreement.
We're in agreement.
I think,
Okay.
well, I can't speak for the whole.
No, let's put it,
commission.
let's say you and I are in compliance.
I think a lot
With
of us.
each other.
A lot of us agree that those are affordable with a lowercase
Yes.
a, that they seem to be accessible to people
Yes.
in an affordable way. Unfortunately, the state doesn't count them.
Well-
And we don't like that any more than.
Okay,
you do.
and I think that's something that, that's a reality though, whether the state likes it or not. Okay, state has its own point of reference, and as you said, and as the people said here previously, one of the factors they're really going for is we don't want to become a socialist, communistic, governed by one titular person. And our governor just said he wants to obliterate all single-family homes. That's what I just heard tonight, okay? Okay, he wants to put
Well, you also heard that we want to obliterate our own regulations.
Okay, well, yeah, and he
That's
wants to put
definitely not true.
multifamily homes everywhere and eliminate the single-family home, okay? Totally ridiculous commentary from a politician, okay? And I'd be glad to tell him personally.
I would too.
Okay, but now taking my numbers that I just said, and there are 9,000 households and 9,000 structures within the house that hold families, okay? And if we deal with a number of 500 okay, that are affordable, that gives us a percentage of 18% affordable homes in town at present. Okay, so, that, and you could reduce that a little bit, like I could take it there,
500 out of 9,000?
500 out of 9,000, okay.
500 out of 9,000 is 5.5%.
Yeah.
That's 5.5, yeah, that's about right.
Okay, 5.5 per percent. I'm sorry, my calculator, there's something wrong, I didn't catch it. Okay, very good. Thank you, I stand corrected. Okay, the point is that we've got a good percentage right here, moving forward, okay? And,
You don't have a percentage of housing that will qualify for exemption from the 10% regulation.
well, again, as I said, one of the things is that the state is saying one thing and we're saying another thing.
What the state says is what controls it.
Well, I think we also have our own destiny to consider.
You have your own destiny, but not your own regulations.
Well, I think as a town, we've got to voice ourselves more strongly.
And sir, I think we also agree with you, or at least many commissioners, I can't speak for everybody, but many of us would agree that, that something ought to be done to the law at the state level, but,
Well, with
unfortunately, we
all of
also
the-
have to at the same time deal with
With all of the
reality.
lobbying that's been done, as was said before, okay, that's gonna be very hard to do, okay? Especially with the climate and tenor that we have in our society today. But the point is that Richfield is moving very favorably towards accomplishing this on a very, sort of voluntary basis. Because the homes that have been built, like the multiple complex on New Street, that went for 30%. The project that opened up next to the rec center there, that went, with the correct percentage. So the builders or the developers are trying to do this. The point is that I'm afraid that something's gonna happen like on Prospect Street down there where that fellow tried to build a 3-story or 4-story unit, and then the home next to it had to take him to court to fight
Can you stay
this.
for the rest of the night?
Huh? Excuse
Can
me?
you stay for the rest of the night?
Yes, I will stay for the rest
We're gonna be discussing
of
that
the
next.
Okay, but that is one of those things that, how did he get permission to build such a high-level house and out of place for the area? Okay? That's one we can talk about later. I'd love to talk more about that.
I'm going to
Okay?
interrupt you for a moment.
Yes.
If you've been listening to the public hearings that have been going on, I think you would have heard that the way a building gets built bigger than the regulation allows is to be an 8-30G affordable housing project, which obliterates zoning regulation virtually. That's how that happens.
Right.
You asked the question?
Okay, well, thank you. I'm glad you gave me that response.
This commission for decades, I've been on for decades, but I'm aware for decades, I don't think this commission has been, skirting its own regulations. This commission's job is actually to enforce its own regulations.
Okay, well, I'm hoping not, because I hope it really keeps everyone's feet to the fire, because we really want to protect the homeowners in this town, to be very frank with you.
That's this commission's goal as well.
That's the bottom line,
We're all homeowners or residents anyway in this town.
And I'm glad to hear that there's gonna be no zoning changes, okay, so 1 acre and that's it, and that nobody is gonna be allowed to build, on a 12-acre lot is gonna be allowed, okay, now you can have 2-acre zoning for your home, so now you can build 6 homes instead of the 4 that you originally were planning, okay, so great. And the part that really scared me is the part that I said last week, and that is that it's been stated that there was a need for 650 affordable homes. Okay, now based on the percentage of homes, that's 5.5% or whatever it is, and it's probably more because I just took a rough count going around. Okay, you can come up with the correct count. But I'm saying the count is going to be about 6 to 7% at worst, okay, of affordable homes. And we don't want that, change. That's pretty close. And as you said, you're not looking for the 10, you're looking for something closer. Again, I'm saying we're pretty close to it, or we're there, okay? Now,
What you're missing is that we're not there. We're not near there. The units that you're talking about in Casagmo and Fox Hill are not affordable according to the 8-30G housing appeals standard.
It just isn't.
Well, the fact is that nowhere in the time of the whole continuum of the pricing of homes in the last 30 years has anything in those units gone for anything over what the affordable housing price is.
I don't think you know that.
I know that from watching what real estate is doing.
Yeah, but
Okay?
did you know, I'm not gonna challenge you on this any
No.
more than this. It's very important to get these philosophies down pat, because some of them are okay and some of them are not.
Mhm.
This is your suggestion.
Yeah.
But for you to come in and say that Fox Hill and Casagno have affordable units that are going begging, affordable by the state standard.
I didn't say they're going
Not
begging,
Richfield.
I'm saying they're available.
Not at that rate, they're not available.
Well, they're available at, they've been available from 155 at lowest to 292.
What you seem to be ignoring is that when we say affordable, it's with a capital A, and it's a state definition of
Yes.
affordable. Not that Mary, Joe, and Bill can go out and afford to buy a unit at Casagno. I hope they can, and many of them can. But many of them cannot, because it does not meet the affordable definition of affordability.
Well,
And we agree with you that the state definition is.
right,
is, you
and,
know,
but we shouldn't, but also I want to make clear here that I don't want to beat up the population of Ridgefield when we are really there because the state has this technical term, okay? And we have done a lot to bring that compliance, and that is a fact. So I think a stand has to be made that we fight and against this, that we don't say, okay, we're going to acquiesce to 650 units, okay?
We're not acquiescing.
Okay, so that's
And we're not-
that's
This
the
commission
point.
has not endorsed the development of 650
Yeah.
units either.
Okay, well, I just, that's true, because I've spoken to a lot of people, and the things that I've said tonight are a compilation of a lot of the comments that these people have
There are no
said.
facts in what you said this evening.
Well, there's another point I'm going to make, Mr. Katz, which is, that was said last week too, that that the commission is saying it's a mandate, other people are saying it's not. And that it's
Well,
not
then
a mandate is not a fact either, that it's a fact that it is a mandate. I think it's a matter of interpretation at this point, and the state would maybe like us to think that, but I don't think the state really is stating that. I think we've got to go further.
It's sort of like saying, the state has a mandate that you have a driver's license. You don't need to have a driver's license if you don't want to drive, but if you want to drive, the state has a mandate. So,
Reading
you
the
can
terms,
decide to flout
as
the rules, but.
As Mr. Tartaglia said, reading the terms of the way that mandate, in quotes, I'm going to say in quotes because I'm not accepting that at this point, reads, it's not really a mandate. It is really a strong suggestion that towns follow that.
Let's not go there, because
Yeah.
Mr. Tartaglia was so wrong on that score, that if there's a whole discussion we
Yeah.
don't have time for.
Well, I think it's a discussion that should go into some more legal clarification.
And it absolutely will. So when we close the public hearing, what we do is we have 65 days of discussion. We don't need to take all 65 days, but when the commission has the discussion, whether it's on an application or a regulation amendment, what the commission does is we talk to each other about what we heard. And one of the things that we often discuss is who persuaded us and who was credible in the evidence that they presented. And so, some of your numbers and your facts may have really persuaded people, and that would be great, and that influences their decision. And somebody else might come up, Mr. Tartaglia or anybody else in this room might come up, and they might be less credible.
Yeah.
So that's our job now after the public
Well,
hearing.
I tried to be as credible as I could with the information that I could obtain.
I only say that to say that we will in fact do that. Everything that
Yeah.
Mr. Tartaglia and everybody and yourselves,
Yeah.
everything you say is valuable to be heard.
Yeah.
And then the next thing we do is sort of put that
Yeah.
all in our brains and
Yeah,
try
and
to-
that's right, I'm not just putting this out as hyperbole just to, make commentary. It's really because I want to protect my own home investment, okay? I, love this town and I don't want to see it change much, but yet, if you look at my record of what I've done, I have more than helped people afford to get into this home and move into places where they can't live, okay? So that's a piece that's critical. And again, as I said, we're really for working this affordable housing thing, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak at length of this, and you're not cutting me off as some other groups may have, not in this town, but I've been there. Mr. Ketchum may have wanted me to, you may have wanted to do that, but we'll do it later. But again, thank you very, very much, and I
Thank you very
appreciate
much.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Benson. All right, anyone else? Why don't we, if you don't mind,
Sure.
go to the back,
No,
because
go
somebody
ahead.
else can speak first.
I'll take my turn later. Yeah, good evening. I'd like to thank the commission for all their efforts tonight. This is a hard subject to broach. Everybody, I think, is in consensus that we need affordable housing in some sort of component.
Just remind everybody your name.
Sure, my name is Jeff Mose, local architect, been here since 1964. One question I had technically was the idea or the premise in your first draft about how you're going to craft this, this fee in kind for, in lieu of development for some parcels that frankly aren't probably going to be practical in terms of development and adding a affordable component. Is there some definition in the draft about how that would be formulated?
Yeah, I can read it for the record because it's not that long. It's section E, the draft regulation. It says, when this section would apply to a development application intended to be exclusively single-family dwelling units, the commission may grant a waiver. So actually, it's not even, it's the commission has to decide this. The commission may grant a waiver of all or some of the required affordable units. That's a defined term, affordable units, which basically says state definition, in exchange for the payment of a cash fee in lieu of constructing the waived quantity of affordable units. The fee shall be equal to 300% of the Danbury, Connecticut Metro FMR area median income, which was $134,700 in fiscal year 2022, multiplied by the waived number of affordable units. The fee shall be paid to either A, a housing trust fund for the town of Ridgefield if one exists, or otherwise B, another commission designated entity focused on providing affordable housing within the town of Ridgefield. So we've gotten some feedback in our earlier public hearing that fee seems a little high. And I think that's one of the things that we have to talk about is whether or not that fee is a fair fee.
And how scalable it is, obviously, in the rendition of whether or not it's 5 small houses that somebody might want to put up or 4 or 5 large houses.
Yeah.
And making sure it's scalable to accommodate all those, the incentive behind the development of those types of houses.
Yeah. That draft was taken from another nearby town that used a 300%. It's simple, to be honest with you. But you're right, we could add a little bit of complexity and make it more relevant to the project size. It's one of the items we've heard.
I believe New Canaan as an adjacent town.
Some of the neighboring towns I contacted, and they have something called an impact fee or a linkage fee. So they actually charge for any project done $5 or $10 per 1,000 square feet. That goes towards the affordable housing trust fund.
So that would be like the equivalent of the mandatory minimum.
Right,
Everybody pays.
Right.
Yeah.
So Fairfield, Westport, and New Canaan and Darien, all 4 towns are doing that.
New Canaan, thanks for clarification. Some towns, I think in the past, have done it just for new construction and not for renovations. That is a slippery slope because what's going to happen is you're going to incentivize builders to potentially either preserve a house and renovate it, quote unquote, versus building a new house. Now, obviously, in terms of carbon footprint, we all know renovation is probably a little better than a new house, but sometimes there are practicalities in renovating something to meet a particular standard for a demographic you're going after.
This regulation, as we've drafted it, has nothing to do with renovation. It's only for applications coming in front of the commission that would involve new construction, 4 or more dwelling units.
All right, thank you.
Jeff, as you said, New Canaan does do it for all new constructions and
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah, and keeping the language as simple as possible, as a commission, it was always going to benefit you, the town, and also the attorneys when it's challenged. But thank you again, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, anyone else? Sorry.
Scott DeYoung, Cartatoa Drive, Ridgefield. I believe I've heard in some hearing or other that nobody on the commission believes you can get to the 10% to get out from under 830G, then why are you trying so hard?
I don't think we're trying hard to get
I
out
mean,
from
I
under.
mean to
That's
ratchet up and lay on all this cost structure, if you're not going to reach some particular goal.
Well,
Now,
there's-
affordable housing, I can understand,
There's
but as
also
long
a-
as there's people with means, they're going to set the price because most of the housing already exists.
So when towns do add affordable housing, even if it's not getting to that 10% number, when the town adds even just one unit, we get what's called an HEU, a housing equivalency unit. It gets counted by the state. And we won't spend all the time telling you how HEU calculation you need to pull out your calculus to go back to the math. But every unit counts when it's created. And if you deliver a certain number of HEUs, so if you actually make progress, then you can trigger a moratorium under 830G.
Even if you're below the 10%.
Even if you're below the 10%.
Oh, okay.
And in fact, Richfield had a moratorium from 2014 to 18. Right? 14 to 18, we had a moratorium. And then the moratorium expires eventually. So there is actually merit in making progress, even if you think 10% is sort of this unachievable goal. There's merit in making progress because you can achieve a moratorium, which is
Okay.
really important.
Okay.
And also,
Thank you.
just to note, a large number of the people in this town do believe that we should have some variety of housing costs and some housing that's more affordable. And our plan of conservation and development says the same thing. So for many of us on this board, it's our goal to work toward that.
Okay.
And we're trying to control it locally. We're trying to control it locally. If we don't make these steps and do some good faith effort here and be, open to that development, we're going to have a state mandatory come.
Anybody who screams, about local control and, hates 8-30G and wants to see local control, what we're doing here tonight is attempting to have some local control over this topic. That's what we're trying to do.
Thank you. And thank you for trying to obtain that.
Yes, ma'am. If you don't mind standing up, just because you got a microphone up in the front.
I just have a question for you, because as I read through the statute and the report from the Housing Committee, somewhere along the way in there, I read that there really is not a 10%, if you hit a 10% achievement of all your housing structure, which would be 900 units in Ridgefield, that doesn't guarantee you anything. The state can still require more. That 10% doesn't guarantee you a waiver from further affordable housing. Is that true, or
As far as I know, it is not true.
I've never heard such a thing.
never heard such a
The
thing?
state statute, I think, is pretty clear. Maybe somebody will educate us.
I think that-
Here's an attorney.
The standard is that if you reach the 10% level, then the burden doesn't shift
That's right.
to public health and safety on 8-30G.
Yeah.
So you would have a normal
right.
zoning analysis.
But it doesn't waiver your responsibility for building more. And I think most people in Ridgefield think, oh, if we could only reach 10%, we're done. And I didn't read anything that said that.
You wouldn't have the threat of an 8-30G with a burden shift so that the town had to show that it was for a public health and safety reason that the 8-30G was denied.
Oh, okay.
So that's the benefit you get for the 10%. But what happens when you're building these units is that as you're building affordable units, you're building fair market
Right,
rate
so you
units.
never get out
And
from
so
under
the
it.
math is such that it's tricky.
We understand that.
Yeah.
They build 10 units
that's
and
why we say
2 or
we
3,
hope we never
you're
get
always
there.
behind the 8 ball.
Right.
That's why I suggested that instead of trying, like a gerbil on the mill going around, why don't we take a look at our needs and build to our needs, and don't fight the state, just do what we need to do for us and put it in your regulation, that we will go forward with renovations, repairs, whatever it takes.
Yeah, we don't actually, this commission does not build. So I think it might be confusing, the Board of Selectmen, and the Affordable Housing Committee, and the Ridgefield Housing Authority, and those groups, they might be involved in advancing projects of specific. This commission reviews projects that are proposed. We don't actually advocate for any particular project. That's not our role. We don't go out and say, we should build here and we should do that.
No,
That's
I
not our
know, they
role.
have to come to you, I
Yeah,
understand that.
so we're not the commission that would say, let's go renovate this or let's go do that. That's just not what we,
But
that's
in
not our
your
role to come.
amendments, can you somehow say that you want to, that we will do an assessment every other year and make recommendations to go forward with affordable housing when we have a waiting list that is such and such, or when there is a need.
I don't think the enabling legislation under 8-2 has a section that allows that, or accommodates it.
I think many of us might agree with you that that should be done. It's just not the thing that the Planning and Zoning Commission would do. That's the sort of thing that Board of Selectmen or the Affordable Housing Committee or whatnot, they would be out there advocating for projects. We're not advocates, to be clear, of any projects. We're the reviewers. We're the judges of projects that come before us. That's our job.
Thank you.
If anything, Rob, when we made our comments to the affordable housing plan, we actually shot down some of the suggestions that were in the original drafts that we thought were absurd.
Well, inappropriate is not absurd.
Okay, any other comment, questions? We're happy to have them because we love the dialogue, but we've got an agenda that we do have to keep moving with.
Well, in that case,
Mr. Carr, I knew we couldn't get through this.
this is the one that's been uploaded to
Thank you, sir.
your server,
Thank you, sir.
and I'm not going to read it to you, but
Thank you for that. I owe you a beer for that.
Okay.
By the way, we need to know if Mr. Tartaglia had pancakes with Mr. Katz.
I don't know.
For the record.
We could do pancakes and beer, how's that? But no ex parte communication. Anyway, just a couple of things. Mr. Sankuti had pointed out that only a small portion of Ridgefield, he said 60% of it was off limits to 830G because the infrastructure wouldn't support it. So I've supplied you with how much the water pollution control map, covers. It's about 7% of Ridgefield has the sewage that might support an 830G project. The other thing that I have in here is the watershed map, and I think it's really important to note.
Just to interrupt you, I'm sorry. That's assuming that you say that any project that's not on public sewer will not qualify for 830G treatment.
Right. Well,
and I'm not sure that the commission would agree with you. In fact, we've seen 830G applications that are not on public sewer. So,
Mr. Sankuti. The first one in town was Mr. Sankuti.
Right.
Right. I think the other problem is.
In fact, this premise is not one that I'm sure that I'm not sure the commission would accept that basic premise. But let's keep going if you like.
But the point, he said 60% is off. I'm saying
he said that. I'm just. I'm
saying that I think
the commission agrees with his basic assertion that.
I think the other part, the other thing you have to realize is that the other part of the town, 25% of it is open space, so that's off limits. So I mean, there are some things that when people say that 830G could go any place, whether it's 60% or 80% or 50%, that's an overstatement, and I think we can at least agree to that.
Yes.
And one of the things that I think you probably heard, Mr. Pichet, is the question about obliterating zoning regulations. That was actually something that's on video that Mr. Katz said when he was saying this is a good plan for Ridgefield and for developers, and that it will obliterate zoning regulations in Ridgefield. And if you want, I'll send you the link. But I believe, and he may have misspoken, or he may have been, again, a bit of hyperbole, but I think that's what he's referring to. The 650, I think, is from some of the things that the Affordable Housing Committee has said, and I agree with you, you'll never get there.
I think sometimes it's good, it's easy for a good video editor to take comments out of context, so that might be.
Well, I think that I can give it to you in context or out of context, and it basically says the same thing. But you know what a quote is? It's something said out of context. Anyway, this issue about affordability, I mean, I think everybody generally agrees that we want affordability in different price points. Where I think it comes apart is when we start trying to appease the 830G God and inch our way up with low-income restricted housing. I hate saying affordable because it's a euphemism for low-income restricted housing. I wish we'd just say low-income restricted housing and get it over with. Affordable housing is not affordable unless it's low-income restricted. And for me, there are big problems with low-income restricted housing. There's administrative costs, not only for the landlord, but also for the tenant. I think it's demeaning. I think it's discriminatory. And yes, I understand the state, has this 830G. The problem is that it not only distorts the market, but it distorts thinking. When you use the state AMI, for example, for a single person, it's about $62,500. Everybody thinks that we would have affordable housing for teachers and for police under this. Police, an entering patrolman contract is $70,000. So there's no police person in Ridgefield that would qualify for a low-income restricted unit. At $62,500, there are only 31 teachers out of 472 who might qualify if they had no other income. As long as they only work the 187 days that they're contracted for. And by the way, if you add all those contract numbers up, and they're about the total budgeted for certified salaries among teachers is about 16.5% above that contractual base salary. So I don't know what that other $7 million is, but I don't think there are a lot of teachers, and probably not more than 10 or 12 teachers, who could actually qualify if you use the state AMI. So I agree with Dr. Lipton. It won't get you credit. And by the way, those, what was it, HUIs? HEUs. Those are gold stars. I used to fall for that when I was in first grade. No more. Unless it's going to get you to the 10% or to a moratorium, and I think most people.
Well, HEUs are what gets you to a moratorium.
Right. And I guess
that's how they count your progress toward a moratorium,
right.
with HEU.
And I think if you sit down and really looked at it, your chances of getting to a moratorium, there are two chances. Slim and none at all. You're not going to get to a moratorium. It's not going to happen. So that's another kind of false goal.
I think, Mr. Carr, our records, I believe our records are that we're about halfway there already since 2018.
Right, it's asymptotic. You can get close to it.
And we were
You'll
just
never
on
reach
for
it.
2014 and 2018, so I don't think
It's
it's
asymptotic. You'll never get to it.
But we already.
But we already did, we just.
I know
came
you
off
did
of-
once, and they're temporary. They last for like 4 years.
Right.
So you might get one for 4 years, but my point is I don't think you're going to get one. I don't think you'll get there. So in the meantime, what you're doing is you're setting income standards that people you really want to be able to have access to low income, to affordable housing. It doesn't give them the access that you want them to have with a state median income. So if you do it with the area, or more importantly, if you did it with Ridgefield's median, that would open up a lot of that housing to a lot more people. And then you would have something that local people really need instead of trying to appease the 830G guy. So, and the other part of it, I think Mr. Hanshy pointed out that when you do an 830G and you have these 30% low-income restricted units, you have to charge the market rate people enough to offset those low-income units. And in the end, it doesn't lower your cost burden percentage, if that matters to you at all. But because it's a zero-sum game, I promise you the developers don't subsidize those low-income units. It's the other renters in the development who do 100% of the subsidization. So I hope that is useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Carr? All right. Anyone else? Okay, how's Commission feel? Is there any hands online?
Yeah, I had a hand up.
Oh,
Christopher.
Mr. Volson.
Hey, I had two comments. Hopefully I don't lose it. I feel like I'm almost losing it. One, the gentleman just brought up an item about the sewer system. In reality, though, even if an 830G setup was being constructed, relying on a leaching field and septic system, that septic system still needs to be pumped and discharged into our town plant. So isn't there a regulation in plant on how much effluent they can discharge, or is that it's probably more of a question for the other thing, but I just wanted to kind of point that out. The pipes in the street aren't necessarily the things that are at capacity. There's also the plant itself. The other issue I had was the sorry, lost my thought. Monday. Was sorry, long day. Is for the oh my god, my brain shot.
Maybe you can come back to it.
I lost it. I'm sorry. I'll come with a question. I'll email the panel later. Thanks.
Yep. Okay, so how's the commission feeling? I think we've taken a lot of public input hearing tonight. We want to keep this public hearing open, or?
Well, I did want to know if the Board of Selectmen or the Affordable Housing Commission had commented on the.
I think the Affordable Housing Committee has already gone on the record in writing from Mr. Goldberg, a lot of comments, and then he said that he invited his other committee members to, appear, submit in person. I've heard from two of them, Ms. Mazzola, Ms.
Three of them.
Francescini. Three of them, sorry, and Mr. Campbell, so three of them. I think that's the input that I think that they intend to do. On Board of Selectmen, I know, we sent a formal referral on November 29th, I believe it was, and we haven't heard anything back, so. I see Mr. Hebert, but I don't know if he's interested in speaking.
I'm sorry?
We have a referral into the Board of Selectmen on this topic that goes back to November 29th. We haven't heard anything formally. I don't know if you want to say.
It hasn't been brought up at the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
I just want to comment, I think that's a little concerning that the Affordable Housing Plan, which is where we took this concept from, that was approved by the Board of Selectmen and created by the Affordable Housing Commission, that they haven't provided in over 2 months any feedback to us. I do think that is important feedback because they are the body that ultimately confirmed the plan, submitted it to the state. So just wanted that on record that I do feel that the Board of Selectmen, in authorizing that plan, should at least comment that they are for or against the work that we're doing.
Anything else, commissioners? And do people have, go ahead, Ms.
I was
Constantino.
just gonna say, just from things I'm listening to everybody talking, I just wanted to kind of reiterate, this is how I see it, that we don't think we're going to get to the moratorium with just this. This is just a tool. This is just one way. That we are not under the impression, or I'm not under the impression, that this is going to solve the whole problem. This is just a little piece of it, and there are other things that we can do that we haven't even started to talk about. We can't get to them until we finish this up. And then we will get to them and that will go towards it. But we aren't under the impression that we're trying to encourage all this building to try to get to this moratorium. We're just trying to, what Rob said, keep us from going backwards and keep us moving in the right direction. And this is one way, and that's how I see it. I'm not speaking for everybody, but.
Well, it's not only that we have to do one thing at a time. I think as a town that we should be looking collectively at affordable housing, and we can only do so much, which I would love to see a prioritization of those 18 things in the affordable housing plan. What actually are we doing and who's owning those things, which I've brought that up in multiple meetings and have not heard anything about how that's being handled, which I think is very important just for the town as a whole, because I think affordable housing is important, and I'm not as concerned about a moratorium or 10%, but just having different housing options for different people of different income levels in town.
I looked at one apartment. I was trying to help a friend of mine look at it because of my real estate background. I looked at what she was trying to do going into one of the affordable units in the town. She was trying to purchase, and I read through everything and I looked, and I did do a comparison. So for the gentleman that was talking about Fox Hill and Casagmo, and I did compare what was available to purchase at the time, so I could kind of help her look and see, you know, and it was, even though they are more affordable, as Mr. Katz said, with the small A affordable, they're more affordable than other things that you could buy. They still were more than the controlled unit that she was looking at, and I think the unit was, I believe it was at 80%. I don't think it wasn't, you know, super low or anything, and it was a lot. And she ended up not being able to afford it. And this is a resident of the town. This is somebody who lives here. It wasn't somebody, you know, just coming in and just inquiring. And we looked through all of it. So although they might go for less money than other things that you could purchase, it still was more than that number was there. And then, but it was still difficult. It was not affordable with the small A, which is different than affordable by the state standard.
Okay, so how do people feel about closing the public hearing versus keeping it open? I mean, I agree with Mariah that, you know, it'd be nice to have more input, but I think we're risking the point of
We keep it open forever and we never wrap up.
Motion to approve is.
And then we are open
we have
to
to
start,
close the public hearing.
then we begin working on the document.
Yeah, that would be, you know, if we feel that we've heard everything we're gonna hear substantially from the public in terms of influencing our thoughts.
They've had several cracks at it. Though them as hasn't showed, it's their problem.
Yeah. And
Can we also say that we're definitely gonna work on it? We're not just going to shut this and just vote on it in 5 seconds from now, so that people can be reassured that we now are gonna take everything we've heard. We're gonna have heartfelt discussion about it and go from there with it.
I'll just recap the dates for people's benefit. So we opened the public hearing period on December 27th, 2022. So under normal circumstances, you'd close the public hearing within 35 days, so that would have been January 31st. We've extended, and we can extend ourselves, so that's easy. We don't need to ask anybody for permission, so we've extended to now. But if we close, let's say today, February 7th, then we would need to render a decision by April 13th.
Well, the commission doesn't have to abide by the 65 day.
We have,
So yes, it's good to do it in 65 days.
Yeah.
But you are not abiding by that, so.
yeah, sure. Okay.
Just out of curiosity, since this question came up before, we shut the public hearing, say we needed a piece of information. Since this is generated by us, are we allowed to open it again? That was just a question that came up before.
Generally, no.
Okay, I just wanted to put that out there.
But it can be, information can be supplied by the acting town planner.
Yeah, through the staff, we can get certain information, because we can continue to talk to staff, and yes, we can make modifications to, just like we would in an application to close the public hearing, and then sometimes we talk about conditions and modifications to the approval, so we can continue to do that. But it will be the end of the public. Okay, so you want to do a motion, or I think
I'll move close public hearing.
all right, we have a motion to close the public hearing from Mr. Katz. Is there a second? Second from Mr. Molyneux. All in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Wait one more week to give the Board of Selectmen a chance to hopefully weigh in on their plan.
They have a formal letter since November 29th.
Yeah, well,
All right, so the motion carries with one nay from Ms. O'Cronley. Public hearing's closed at 8:54 p.m. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 3.2 on the agenda. The public hearing is closed for our regulation text amendment regarding inclusionary zoning. We do have an amendment, we do have a document in front of us. At this point, we can either have discussion about the draft, or somebody can make a motion to approve it.
Can we make a motion to postpone? Can we table the discussion? We have to, I feel like there's a ton of work that we're gonna begin to do on this, but tonight has been a very long night. Can we just table it for our next meeting?
So you make a motion to table.
Motion to
So there's a motion to approve on the first. If there's a second to that, we have to acknowledge that first. Is there a second for that motion to approve? Not getting a second. All right. All right. So is there another motion or other discussion?
Motion to table.
You want a motion to table to the next regular meeting?
Correct.
I'll second that. All right. Is there any discussion on the motion to table?
Rob, can we make it early in the next week, in the next meeting's agenda, so we're fresh?
Yes, it will be, as Mr. Carr mentioned, it should be first based on the timing.
Maybe it should be only.
Okay, all in favor of tabling this to the next regular meeting? Is there any opposed? There's one opposed, Mr. Molinino, but the motion carries. We'll table A-22-5 to the next meeting. We'll have some discussion. February 21st. Thank you.
This is Kurt Carr, on the record. Thank you for watching.